Hey, guess what? We got our first trailer for Secret of the Mimic today. Considering that we've already had 2 teasers, one short and one in-game Help Wanted 2, it was about time, especially since we now have a release date, which I will cover as well. But first off though, let's cover this trailer and what we know about it, and what we've learned from it. Firstly, the premise of the game has been laid out for us. We are a worker for H.E.L.P.E.R Entertainment who has been tasked to head into a factory belonging to Edwin Murray, a character from the books who is the creator of the Mimic, who has defected from H.E.L.P.E.R Entertainment so that we can find the Mimic prototype for H.E.L.P.E.R Entertainment. But along the way, we find our efforts thwarted by a slew of threats, any of which could just be the Mimic we're searching for. It looks so far like the whole game takes place in this building, so unless we have a last-minute jump in location, it's possible that the Fall Fest stuff is off the table and will maybe just be referenced to, not an actual location. Unless there's like some Fall Fest prop stuff located in the factory. It's too early to tell. But now that that general premise is out of the way, let's deconstruct what we actually see in the trailer, because there's actually a lot of stuff here. Starting off, the factory is apparently known as Murray's Costume Manor, and is the MCM company seen on the puzzle in the Help Wanted 2 teaser. This wasn't stated in the trailer, this was something I stumbled upon on the wiki when I went to see if there was any fresh new images for harvesting. I like to see if there's some clean images before I start making a video. Unless I'm looking at it wrong, that mask shop thing is actually, I thought it was part of an amusement park, but it actually is likely the front of the business, and then the factory portion is in the back, kinda like Fairy Godmother's cottage in Shrek 2. We see that the factory is filled with a lot of oversized toys, mascots, suits, cutouts, and the like. Plenty of places for the Mimic to hide. A lot of dog characters this time around, including one with an Innard party hat and this really ugly one in cutout form that appears again later. There's also a lamb and, dear God, what is that? I think we finally found Beta Innard. Woof. Our character uses a generator to open a door into an old tiny office. I don't know why, but the way this is set up gives me Hello Neighbor vibes. Like the newer game where they had a lot of puzzles and the setup, you get it. Though the view outside of the window gives me Desolate Hope vibes. A weird sort of clash there. There's also a little mushroom guy here. Later on, we'll see another mushroom, but this one's different. There's also a poster that says, "Don't be late or be punished," which seems to suggest that there are other workers other than Edwin Murray, but apparently they all just disappeared. Or maybe didn't disappear, maybe Edwin had them laid off, or maybe the whole place is automated. It's not clear right now. We see a mascot form of the ugly dog, followed by the saddest elephant in existence. You may recognize him or his twin brother from the Mimic's room in the Pizzaplex basement. And then there's another ugly dog. Assuming this one is a dog, it's hard to see past the mouth and face. We then see what looks to be the Tiger Rock plush, except it is moving. It's hard to make out the size because I'm not sure of the scale of where I'm looking. So this might actually be a mascot, and we're just seeing it at a distance. But I'm thinking it's the plush. Through these bars we see the shadow of Jackie lurking about. Though her voice in this clip sounds maybe a little different. Since it's Jackie, I think the voice has just been distorted. As we've heard in the Jackie clips, her voice kind of goes up and down and can get very deep. So that's probably all it is. We also see to the left a mouse wind-up toy, and we'll get back to this. We then see, again, the clown elephant. I went to see if this is actually the exact same mascot from Ruin, but when I went back and looked, I noticed that Ruin's elephant lacks tusks, and looking at the face build, there isn't anywhere to put the tusks either. So either A, this is a similar mascot suit of the same character, but not the same suit, or B, the elephant has had an update in appearance since Ruin, and this is its new canonical appearance. Considering that technically you don't see the elephant mascot unless you're in free camera mode, I think, that could be it. At the end of the day, this is likely the same character as the pinstriped elephant. And that would mean that he is a big enough character that he comes in different designs. The striped one that's possibly a baseball player, and this clown. And considering the amount of attention he's getting, I'm going out on a limb and guessing this guy is going to be a reoccurring threat, or a noticeable threat, in the factory. Though I did notice when the scene fades out, it looks like the elephant turns like he's going to walk off. Maybe he's just a roaming animatronic getting quirky at night. I'll kind of bring this up later, but something that I was considering is the possibility that the only aggressive animatronic at the facility is the Mimic, and that the Mimic activates other animatronics to wander around, and those animatronics don't necessarily hurt you, but if you stumble upon the one that's the Mimic, you can get yourself killed. And the reason I pulled this out of thin air is for a reason I'll bring up later. We'll get back to that. Let me bring this up now. It is unclear if he is an actual animatronic or is just the Mimic in a costume. Personally, I think that if every character was the Mimic, it would lead to a huge issue. Like, when Security Breach had to have teleporting because there was only 3 animatronics roaming, having everyone be Mimic would mean that no 2 threats could be in the same room together. Unless it was a situation where Mimic activated an animatronic to patrol around and then hid himself inside of another suit. But I digress. Also, in this hallway to the right, you can see relatively recent posters for Fredbear's Family Diner. They're the ones we're familiar with already. We cut to a scene of Jackie sticking her arm out of a vent and then poking her head out. And we seem to be climbing a ladder nearby. She looks beneath her and doesn't seem to see us. In this case, her eyes are darkened out with little yellow lights, matching the deconstructed Jackie from the first teaser. And with this, I think we can finally say Jackie and the thing that looked like Jackie are indeed both Jackie. I know, I'm shocked too. We then cut to a mushroom mascot. He kinda looks like a mix of Toad from Mario, the gnomes from Little Nightmares, and Vivi from Final Fantasy IX. As we zoom in, its eyes glow. Now, these eyes are also red-orange, but they're a different structure to the Mimics in Ruin. However, this is the same texture as Jackie's eyes in this picture I found elsewhere. So either A, these are the proper eyes that the animatronic mascots in the building have, and the Mimics' eyes are different, or the Mimics' eyes have changed. If they are different, then that would add to the possible mechanic of having to differentiate threats by sussing out which is the Mimic by using their eyes. Or the Mimic's eyes have just been upgraded and they're just all the Mimic. We're then above a puzzle room. Inside we can see another version of the elephant mascot. This one is missing an arm. We're then down in the room and our player, who is wearing the gloves from Coraline, pulls a lever and a panel opens, revealing the puzzle. It was open in the scene beforehand, so these scenes are actually out of order. Then we see a robot in an office. Now, I have not seen confirmation on this, but I think this is the early staff bot that was mentioned in the demo. They mentioned a letter sorting office, and this doesn't exactly look like that, but he does have a small mailbox flag on the side of his head. So either him or another who looks just like him. He does have damage though, so maybe he was injured when Jackie came in and freaked out all over the letter sorting office, and then he either wheeled himself into this other office, or we wheeled him around. He does seem to be on a base that can be wheeled around, and he also has buttons on the front, either to communicate through or work with. His face reminds me of Big Weld. Yeah, there's a face I haven't seen in a long time. There's also a pretty gift box on the desk. It almost looks out of place, so I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that we're still collecting things in gift boxes. Then we cut to us plopping a crank into a door and turning it. This is the crank that was taken from Jackie's box, as we know from the demo. We see Mushroom Man sauntering by, and it gives me deja vu to that one Security Breach trailer where Chica had the stompy walk cycle. Also, we can see that bee from the poster hanging on a swing by the roof just behind him. I also noticed this concerning looking character on a push button cutout. You might be familiar with those from Poppy Playtime, but they are a real thing. Then we're on the roof, no doubt intending to throw ourselves off to escape the island of misfit toys. We then see what is likely the actual Tiger Ronk mascot. It doesn't really match the book, but as you may not be aware, the book artists aren't always 100% up to date on the designs. That's why Ralphio is a toy despite being a costume in the book, because the artist was told rabbit and not clarified human-sized. Actually, on second thought, that also might be a mask. We then have our character jamming an early fast wrench into a computer that unlocks the terminal, or computer and terminal. We are shown an early version of H.E.L.P.E known as H.E.L.P.E.R, and that's an acronym of some kind. And there's the options to reset welcome show and an option locked behind executive access. Now this welcome show is probably a stage show, maybe for testing or maybe to welcome folks to the factory. Either it came on before, like when you came into the factory and you can reactivate it, or you must activate it for a mission or like to get by somewhere. But that's working too far ahead. This welcome show is probably connected to the partial tropical themed set we see downstairs, involving what looks to be a crab, a fish or otter sort of guy, and the bee from before hanging over them. There's also a cake prop to the left that kind of looks like the cake from Help Wanted. We are then accosted by an animatronic who looks sort of like a mixture of Jackie and Ella, and I think it's supposed to be a nurse. She has scraggly brown hair and a green dress over a white shirt, and has some loose wiring. On second thought, those don't seem to be wires but hoses, connected from her wrists to a tank that she wears on her back. It's unclear what this tank is, but the thing that comes to mind immediately might be that it's an air tank for blowing up balloons, kinda like Baby, but who knows. The bottom of her legs look broken, but it's kind of hard to see. She kind of resembles Baby in her jaunty stumble toddle. There's also some sort of face thing to the right and a party hat thing to the left. We then see us winding up that mouse from before and throwing it, which you know in real life wouldn't work. That thing would get stuck right on its back. But interestingly enough, in this room, there seems to be in the very back an early Monty Gator related character back there. Now this Monty Gator relative is very interesting. Well, first of all, he's carrying a banjo, which kind of relates to a bass, but more importantly, since FNAF 3, we've seen masks that resemble an alligator. At one point, it seemed to be a Hoppy Frog mask, but recently in the books, they've talked about this gator mask being worn by Andrew, and with, of course, Monty Gator showing up, the idea that there was, at one point, a gator character before Monty was always on the table. So this seems to be that character. That doesn't mean this character is actually going to appear in any significant way, but it's kinda neat to see him. Also to the far right, there's a deconstructed pig that looks a lot like VIP. There's also a lot of ducks in this room. We're then running down a hallway with Jackie chasing us above. This is probably from the demo, but I'm not sure. Then suddenly, we're somewhere else, and something just smashes through the ceiling. It is, in fact, a Music Man variation with a grinder in its mouth. I can't imagine what this thing could have been used for. Building? Maybe. It has grabber hands and like steel girder arms, so maybe it builds buildings, things, or maybe it disposes of garbage, or like actually maybe it's a tree cutter. It either has a nutcracker or old President George Washington sort of look, with the white mustache and powdered white wig sort of thing going on. The grinder in its mouth could be for, well, a whole lot of nuts, or it could be for trees, and if it's for trees, it might be a companion animatronic to that Music Man tree thing we saw teased in the PAX poster. Since the bee is shown appearing, it is very possible that this tree might show up as well, even if there is another Music Man running around. Then we get the release date, June 13th, 2025, Friday the 13th. Tempting fates there, aren't we? Crossing my fingers for a smooth release. So, let's do a quick assessment here. The animatronic threats we will be encountering will be Jackie, who is likely dogging us throughout the entire facility and is the main threat, the elephant, the mushroom, the nurse, and this giant Music Man looking guy. They may all be the Mimic, or it's possible they aren't and that we have to decide who is what. Like if towards the end of the game, the actual Mimic is unleashed and starts hiding in suits, and he's way more aggressive than everyone else, and we have to kind of just suss out where he's hiding. We do see plenty of other characters though. Like I mentioned before, there's the dog, who appears quite a bit, so he must be a major character. He might be some variation of Sparky or Fetch. There's the gator that looks like Monty. Another note on the mask thing, and I forgot to mention this earlier, FNAF 3 showed all those children with all those masks, and this is a factory that makes costumes and masks, and one of the masks was a gator mask, and there's a gator character here, so it's possible that we could have some sort of mask connection, Majora's Mask sort of situation here. You know, funny thing, I'm gonna say that, and now, from now on, whenever I need a picture of Edwin Murray, I'm gonna use the Happy Mask Salesman from Majora's Mask. Anyways, moving on. We do see, like I said, the swinging bee here, but she doesn't seem to be an actual animatronic, and instead more of a prop. I mean, it is very possible that she's a balloon boy sort of character, and that she could maybe alert where you are or something. She does seem to be, unless I'm looking at it wrong, there's either two of her, or she's in different locations, but for now, she just looks like she's a prop. The staff bot dude's cool, a little uneasy around the mouth and eyes, but I can live with him. I heard somewhere that in the demo there was a night puppet, so I'm crossing my fingers that this night puppet spontaneously osmoses his way into my line of sight at some point soon. Oh, and that clown thing. Let me tell you something. The scariest thing in this entire teaser is whatever that thing is on that cutout. I hope that thing shows back up. And like I said earlier, it looks so far like we're only going to be in the factory. That might not be the case, but it might be. I'm a little concerned about the length of the game. I was hoping it would be like a full-size game, but it is possible that this will be like maybe ruin-sized. Of course, we're just seeing a very small part of it, so that's less what I'm seeing and more my sort of general concerns. I mean, I don't need it to be like the longest game in the world, but I do hope that it's fulfilling. So, what do I think of it so far? I think it looks neat. Okay, to be honest, it's sort of too early to have any real impression on it. It's kind of just, it kind of was. But I rather have a safe trailer and not get my hopes up or get too excited than to see something really fantastical and have it not appear in game. I'm kind of, split on the new designs. I don't think any of the designs are bad, because when the first Secret of the Mimic teaser came out, I thought the puppet clown was very ugly. But now seeing Jackie in complete form, I think Jackie looks great. She doesn't look great bald. I definitely think Jackie is the most interesting design of the lot. And I'm not saying I don't like the other designs, I'm just saying they kind of are. Jackie is the daycare attendant of the group. Like, I remember when I saw the first Security Breach trailer, and I saw the daycare attendant, and I was like, oh wow, that thing is horrible, I love it. But I think Jackie is that for me in this case. Everyone else kind of just, they're kind of there. Maybe once I get a better look at them, I'll feel differently. Especially Music Man. I feel like he's going to be pretty neat, but I had like a hard time getting a good visual on him, even when I paused the video. So seeing his model up close, that's going to be a whole new experience. But I'm also kind of assuming that he's going to be like Security Breach's Music Man and just be like a one-time encounter boss. There's not really much else to say, really. This seems like a weird aside. This is not a complaint. This is just a comment. I'm assuming this game is going to basically be delivering the information from the books about the Mimic into game form. And I think that that is an excellent idea, because one of my biggest problems with the Mimic is that the Mimic's entire backstory and everything about them, how much of a giant threat this thing is supposed to be, was basically locked behind a paywall. Basically, you had to read the books, and it wasn't just like one or two books. You had to read a lot of books if you wanted to have to get everything on the Mimic. And that's a problem when you're trying to take the games in as their own thing, because you get to a part and you're like, oh, who's this character? I hope we learn later. And then you'll have someone be like, no, we already learned about him on page 25 of book 7 of the Freddy's Backyard Guides to Grilling Fresh Corn or something. That was very odd. My point being that I think what the game is going to be doing is introducing the Mimic's backstory into the games in a way where people who just play the games can get the full story of the Mimic without having to read the books. And that makes sense. That would actually fix the problems I have with having to read the books to understand major parts of the game lore. However, I kind of hope that The Secret of the Mimic does a little more with its story than just reciting the books. I'm assuming the story is going to be, we get there, we accidentally unleash the Mimic, we somehow overcome it, and take it to the Pizzaplex so it can be there. We're probably the person in the van that takes Mexis, maybe, and set that up. Ends with Vanny Teaser setting up the Mimic's connections of Vanny and Security Breach. And then we'll have probably like the book story and Edwin Murray's backstory be hidden in secret clues throughout the factory. And that makes a lot of sense. But I kind of do hope it's a little more than just that. I kind of would like it to be a little beefier. I won't get my hopes up if it's just an introduction to the Mimic so that folks won't have to read the books to understand him. That makes sense, and that would totally fix that. I just hope there's a little more than that. Specifically, I'm hoping the secret of the Mimic isn't something that we already know. I hope the secret of the Mimic isn't that the Mimic hides inside of suits, because we already know that. And I hope the secret of the Mimic isn't how Edwin's son died and how that possessed the Mimic. Because, yes, that would be news to people who haven't read the books, but that's not an especially sizable secret. I don't necessarily want the Mimic to become the puppet, but, that would be a pretty big secret. But, I digress. Though, with all the puppet hints floating around, not just in the trailer, but just kind of floating around in the void, there's likely a chance that we will get puppet backstory here. If not for Charlie's death, which would have happened 4 years after this, since this takes place in 1979, then it would be for the creation of the initial puppet. From some of the designs here, an early version of the security puppet, the one that went and found Charlie's body, could have likely been built here, so there could be a connection there. Possibilities, I'm just throwing that out there. The mask thing kind of makes me think about it, but Tape Guy kind of sounds like a young Henry. I don't think he is. So, that's all we really have for now. I hope you're excited to a reasonable extent, because we only have 4 more months before the game's out. So, we'll see how it goes. Thank you for watching.